Welcome to the Intentional Encourager podcast, where each episode brings you compelling conversations and stories designed to entertain, enlighten, and encourage. And now here's your host, Brian Sexton.
And welcome into the Intentional Encourager podcast. I'm your host, Brian Sexton. Thank you for joining us again today. And I have a fantastic guest here. His story is so captivating that I wanted to share it with you in this audience. It's my friend, Tom Libelt. He is the owner of We Market Online Courses. He is an SEO guy, a lot of different things, but that's not why I wanted to have him on. His story is so fascinating, and he is joining me. So at the time we record this podcast, it is 8 in the morning here where I am. It's 7 at night in Chiang Mai, Thailand, where Tom is. And Tom joins me this morning on the Intentional Encourager podcast. Tom, how are you today?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me.
Your day while I slept, while I was a slacker and slept, you were hard at work, just getting after it. So here's where I want to start the conversation today. Your business is so unique. You have almost, and I say almost, I preface it that way. You have almost had your business be recession proof because you're not limited to a physical space. You're not limited to where you can do business. How has the pandemic been for you and your business? Because everybody has differing degrees of how they're handling this thing. So take me through your experience through the last 6 months or so of this global pandemic.
So, the way my business is set up is very intentional in a lot of ways. I put constraints on my business a long time ago to make sure my team doesn't grow too big, to make sure that we can work from anywhere in the world, to make sure we're fairly anti-fragile in a lot of ways. But, none of that could have really foreseen the pandemic, none of that. So with this in mind, we got lucky. And luck plays a big part in our lives, if you think about it. We can work, we can, make things happen, but a lot of times when you really think about it, you're like, well, those things that people can't replicate, of our methods, that's when the luck comes in. And yeah, we got lucky, look, I'm in the course marketing space, which is that e-learning courses space, and the whole world went remote. Yeah. People have to train online. They have to learn things, schools, colleges, businesses. So my niche definitely blew up. I did just fine. We've been booked the whole way through, but we haven't made as much as some of the other companies who are much more built for scale, right? Like these platforms that's seen more growth in April and May than in the whole last year. We didn't have that. The lucky part is that we basically were in the right niche and we did not become non-essential. People still wanted and needed us. Mm-hmm. So we had no problems during this whole thing. And other than looking at the news and not being able to leave and see my parents in the States at the moment, because I could leave, but I can't come back. Mm-hmm. That's the problem. So other than that, it's been business as usual. The hard part has been trying to avoid the news, because the more you look at that, the more crazy everything seems. And on top of it, we got the elections coming. That's always a crazy time anyways, without anything happening. But if you stack things on top of each other, it's just, avoiding the news has been the hassle.
Well, Tom, here's the thing too. A lot of people, for them, this pandemic, to your point, it's almost like the perfect storm in your business because everything went remote. And I really like what you said there. For others, it's like, and I was telling someone the other day, I wouldn't have dreamed that the things that people were going to need desperately, that were going to drive the market to it, were going to be toilet paper in the United States. I mean, whoever at Charmin or Procter and Gamble, whoever's running the paper division is going to have a monster year because I mean it's blown up here. Webcams. I needed a webcam. You couldn't get a webcam where I live for weeks. I mean, the shelves were empty. This global pandemic caused spikes in businesses that just took them this way. And then there were other companies that did the opposite. If you were in the restaurant and the service industry, man, you've had a tough year because things were locked down or the capacity. So when you started to see, and I want to ask you this, when you started to see that, okay, we're going to settle into this thing for a little bit, was there anything that you had to do to your business to be a little bit different? Because I could see, I love the concept that you created. And when you were talking about that, the word that came to mind was nimble. I can move freely from thing to thing, place to place. We're not locked into a physical space. We're very nimble as a business. When it started to settle in for you guys, how much more nimble did you have to become to accelerate the demand that you were getting for your product?
So, usually around April, May, June, like I take time off, because it's just to avoid burnout.
Yeah.
This year we didn't, because I didn't know what next year is going to hold for us. I still don't. None of us do. We don't know. So I was like, well, it might come to it that I'll have 6 months off next year. Who knows?
Yeah.
Right. And I'll be able to work on my own stuff and just, enjoy my life a bit. But like they say, as long as the fish are biting, stay on the boat.
Yeah.
Because you just don't know. We don't like to assume things. So that didn't really change much. I just had to kind of push my vacation back. And I'm still pushing it back, just because, like I said, I think next year might be where things kind of, I don't know if I'd say settle in, but we got to kind of pay back for all the the stuff that we've kind of. Yeah. So the main thing that I told my team is, look, we're fine. But I had businesses beforehand. I had a coffee shop. I had a record store. I had a lot of businesses before this, and people that still have them will not be fine. So a lot more empathy, a lot less sales type of oriented. Let's not push anything onto anyone. Tell people what we can do for them, and then let them relax and figure it out. That was like my main message. Like, make sure we're not one of these companies that messages everyone going like, hey, in these difficult times, what can I do for you, and trying to pitch you. It's so obvious. It's horrible. I hate it. It's just like, things are hard, pay me money, like that type of thing. I really don't like it. And I that was the thing that I stressed with my team. I was like, look, it's going to get a little weird. People are going to be freaking out. Don't take advantage of it. Yeah. That was the main difference that we had. Because usually I tell my team to be super pushy, because, people are busy. People don't have time. Follow up. Just make sure that we lock whatever we have to in. Could be interview, anything. And I told them to back off. That was it.
Well, and I love that strategy because, and I said this, Tom, and this is why I appreciate you being on the podcast this morning. What I said was this when I started the podcast. There's a lot of expertise out there in the marketplace. I could add my own voice to it. However, when people are going through things, the last thing they want is expertise. I love what you said there. Hey, we're just checking in. Here's what we have. If you want it, it's available to you. You just basically told your customers, look, we're here to hold your hand. We're not here to do anything else otherwise, because we're all in this thing together. I love what you said there. How did your team respond from that standpoint, getting that intentional encouragement from you to say, okay, listen, we don't have to push as hard. We can just be people dealing with people, and everybody is dealing with this whole big thing together.
I think they appreciated it. My team, they have friends, family, they work for other businesses. And my approach was completely different from everyone else. And that, I can tell that even my employees, even though the business is fine, they're stressed out. Everyone's stressed out. Stress levels are probably at an all-time high for everyone right now. Even though, we're fairly calm, but, it's like this stress in the background. There's a lot of stressors, which we don't know. The girlfriend looked at the news today, and then we have problems with Europe, we have problems in China, we have problems in Taiwan, America going nuts. Like anything you look at, there's just people are going nuts, because it's just stress levels. It's normal. So, I understand in my team, even though they don't act like it and they maybe shouldn't, they're going to be stressed out. So I think they appreciated me kind of being like, look, you can take the, foot off the pedal a little bit. We'll be fine. We're still getting customers. We're still building an audience. The systems are working fine, but just don't stress yourself or other people out, because that's what's going to happen. When you start being pushy towards stressed out people, they're going to kind of lash back. 100%. And then you're going to have to deal with that. Yeah, and then you're going to have to deal with it. So, one of the things that I've done while we were building an audience, and we continually do, I was thinking of putting some kind of a product out, an educational product, but I was like, you know what? Not the time. So I'm going to build it, and I'm going to let all my audience look at it for free as I'm building it in my email list. So I'm pretty much giving something I could charge a lot for just for free, right?
Yeah.
And even with that, I'm seeing a lot of people, acting like, hey, stop trying to sell me. I was like, there's no sales pitch anywhere in there.
Yeah.
But it's because they're stressed. People are stressed. They've read 5 emails trying to pitch them something in a really bad way. And then when they just look at mine, their brain just doesn't really work well anymore. But this is normal.
Yeah. And the thing of it is that in my career in sales, I never wanted to be, and there was a time that I was 100% commission. There was a time that it's like, hey, I really would like to do this. I worked with a guy once that every time there was a promotion that came out, he was always going to his customers going, help me out, help me out, help me out. We got this promotion. Help me out, help me out. And it got to the point with his customers where it was like they were fatigued. I never wanted to be that way because, I wanted to win trips and I wanted to win promotions and I wanted to win stuff for my family. But when you sell desperately, I don't care if you're face-to-face selling or if you are selling virtually, remotely, however you're doing it, email, desperation comes through in no matter what communication you come at, because when you appear desperate or you sound desperate in the mind of that buyer, guess what? You are desperate.
Yeah, we've been, I would say, fortunate, but it's not fortunate. I've designed a business to have enough social proof and leads coming in and everything, so we don't ever have to come from that position.
And Tom, let me jump in there. I said that because I like what you said there a moment ago about I'm trying to give my audience something, because in this time, I want to show that our business is a giving business. I want to show that we're socially responsible and we're trying to help. And you said, people are like, because of their stress. I think people automatically have started to condition themselves to think, especially when you were talking about the 4 or 5 emails before, like, I'm dealing with my own problems in my own business. and now you're trying to bring me something else that I may or may not need. When you think about that, and I didn't mean to interrupt, but I wanted to go here for just a minute because you're hitting on something really important. How important is it to stay true to your values as a business and to what you believe in? Because, you know, the natural inclination would be, okay, we've got to raise revenue. We've got to do this. We've got to insulate. And it's counterintuitive to what you naturally believe as a business owner. How important was it for you to stay true to your core through this whole thing?
I mean, I try to do that no matter what we're going through, you know. But the thing I wanted to finish up with the emails, like, you know, we had, you know, that reaction just from like a handful of people, and our list is pretty big. And what I noticed is that with every time I, you know, gave more and more, the open rates went way higher on everything, because people are like, man, like this guy, he's giving us like really good stuff, you know, and not asking for anything back. And I won't ask for anything even after it's done. That's not the point of it. But I just looked at the way other businesses were treating this, and it was really strange, you know, like trying to give like positive messages which were on brand, you know what I mean? Like they were very like weird type of things, you know, celebrities making songs. I'm like, who needs this?
That's a good point. That's a great point.
Right?
Yeah.
Who needs it? You know, like I thought the only thing my audience wants right now, especially, you know, since they're course creators, is, you know, sell more courses. So if I can tell them in, you know, bite-sized emails, like different ways of how we do it, you know, no one's going to be mad about that, you know, especially if it's valuable. But I thought, just give the people what's going to actually give them the outcome, instead of trying to like position my brand or you know, give them like, you know, these times are hard and therefore I'm giving you. I'm like, I didn't do any of that. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to start giving them like ideas and help with what they need to accomplish. And I mean, it's been, you know, working quite well for us, but that was the main thing, you know, like how do we make sure we take as many people through this that they come out a little better on the other end because of us. That was really the thinking behind it.
Yeah.
And not posturing, you know, which I find a lot in this business space. A lot of posturing and things which are just not necessary at all.
Well, you were talking about on-brand messaging, and I love that, because I noticed that as you were saying that, there are a ton of commercials. If you sit down here in the States, you watch television, doesn't matter whether you're watching sports or you're watching HGTV, as my wife and I do, the home, you know, DIY network or whatever. Every messaging from a lot of these people are going, in times like these, things are hard. I don't want to constantly be reminded of that messaging. You know, they've got, you know, Amazon is like, well, in times like this, it's hard, and we're trying to do extra things. And okay, great. If I order something on Amazon, just get the stuff here that I need. I don't care that times are hard. They're hard for everybody. I love what you said there about companies trying to be overly empathetic when it's not in their nature to do so. And I think that's where, I think it's what I heard you say. At least that's what
Yeah. And that's correct, right? And this is why, you know, I took this path, because I'm not the most empathetic business either normally. So I thought, look, I'm not going to try to prove or sell people on something I'm not. I'm just going to start giving this info out, and if they take advantage of it, fine. But, you know, I'm not going to all of a sudden be like, hey, you know, I will help you in this. They'll be like, that's not Tom. That was never him. You know, it doesn't work. And that's why these companies, I don't know, especially with Amazon. Come on, man. Like Bezos is making money over a fist. Like, what time's hard for who? What are you talking about? I posted this this meme with Bezos saying, I'm gonna show you guys a magic trick and make a Lamborghini appear. And he's like, 10 seconds later, boom, done. because he made enough money to buy it. Like when he's saying times are hard, it's like, really, Bezos? Like, for who?
Yeah. Yeah.
He
No,
became like 3 times richer than before after this pandemic.
well, we have a connection here in my area where I live because his first wife was her family was from Huntington, West Virginia. And so we've had an Amazon call center here for probably close to 20 years. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah. So people here kind of know that background, but I want to get into your background. You have got such a fascinating story, and that's why I wanted to have you on. You started in business very early. So take me back as far as you want to take me and the audience back to your story growing up in Russia, and bring us kind of, full circle from then to now, because I think it's absolutely fascinating, and I think people will appreciate what you have gone through and overcome in your life to get to where you are.
Yeah, so it was Poland, not Russia.
I'm sorry. Listen, the first cup of coffee has not kicked in yet, so
no, it's all good. It was good. It was in Poland. The way things were when I was little, that you only had really 2 choices in that country, because it was communist, socialist communist at that time, and that's the reason we left to the States. You could get with the program and have the government kind of, support you and help you get ahead, or you had to do things under the table. And my parents hated the regime, so everything in my family really was done under the table. So one of the things my dad was doing, he smuggled alcohol into Germany, and he brought VCRs and things back, electronics, because the tariffs were just insane. We made better liquor, they made better electronics, but getting them back and forth without the Communist Party's involvement was impossible. Or you would end up paying 10 times more than so. It was their business.
Now, Tom, let me ask you this. Was this when Germany was still separated? So was East Germany, West Germany? So West Germany, for some that may not know the historical perspective, East Germany was communist, West Germany was free, and the Berlin Wall separated the two of them. So help me geographically. Is Poland on the east side or the west side? Was it closer to East Germany or West Germany?
On the border of the east side.
So Poland was feeling that real communist tug along with East Germany, because East Germany was very heavily communist and West Germany was free. That's why the wall existed. Yeah.
And by the way, when I went to Berlin a couple of years ago, I walked along that wall. It's beautiful, man. It's got graffiti all the way up and down the wall now. It's really nice what they did with it, and you can still feel the difference in the types of people that live on the east versus the west, and the buildings and just the atmosphere. You can still feel it. But back then, my job as a 6-7-year-old, a couple times, not many, but a couple times, was to lay in the back seat and scream, cry, and make all types of noise when the customs were searching the car. So that was my first job for my dad. When they were searching the car.
You had to create the diversion, didn't you, my man?
Yeah,
you had to create the diversion. Yeah, because who is not gonna have empathy toward parents that have a screaming kid in the back seat? Like, hey, we don't want to deal with this either. Just go on. And that's pretty brilliant on your mom and dad's part.
Yeah, my dad gave me a heads up. You're about to start screaming in 10 seconds. And
my dad, hey, listen, man, my dad would do the same thing, but it was after I did something stupid and my dad was about to spank me. Like, look, in about 10 seconds, you're going to start crying because you did something stupid. So, yeah, but, look what happened. So, but
see, for you, it was punishment. For me, that was a toy coming on the other end.
Well, yeah, I mean, no pain, no gain, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So that was, a part of it. And then he would take me to the soccer stadiums on the weekends in Poland and help sell the stuff. So, I learned really quickly that if you can get something for a lower price and sell it for a higher price, which is basically business, if you can produce or whatever, and make a profit, you're in business, So I had the basics down. And then he also told me, if you can make more than you spend every single month, you'll never have a problem. So it was also a big lesson for me from those days. But that was, yeah.
Now, I want to ask you, now, how did your dad determine that that was the right business to be in? Did he just see a glaring need or a desire? Because some people are intentional about, this is the market that I see, this is the need that I can fill. And other people happen to fall into the business that they go into. They have that moment where they're like, listen, I didn't realize this, so I'm going to pivot quickly and go there, and they're wildly successful. Did your dad have any kind of foresight? Did your parents have any foresight? Did your parents have any training in electronics, or was it just simply, here's a need, we know where we can get it, we can fill it? Did somebody point them to that? Help me kind of bridge. I'm trying to, in my mind, figure out how your parents were brilliant enough to understand that man, this was going to be the way to go. I mean, this was the business to get into.
They've tried a lot of different things. Like my mom would take a bus to Turkey and try to come back with clothes for sale, and other things. They did okay. My dad, I think, went to Romania to do something similar. He went to Sweden a lot. Took me a couple times because we had family up there, and they would pick blueberries in the mountains, which were then turned into paint in Sweden. But the German thing, people were smuggling all types of things. I think cigarettes were like the main ones back. But when he went the first time, all the Germans were asking him for alcohol. That's what they wanted from Poland. He's like, okay, cool. So, he knew what to bring. And then he was looking at, what type of luxury items he can fit, behind the seat, and that people were using as status symbols in Poland. And at that moment, VCRs was one of the big ones. If you had a color TV and a VCR and a satellite, you were pretty much bowling. You're not going to fit a satellite or a TV behind the seat. Not easily.
In West Virginia, where I live, it's the same principle. If you have a satellite dish in your backyard and hey, no joke, man, you can still go to places in this area and the huge, I mean, the freaky huge satellite dishes, not the little tiny things that kind of fit in your garden, your flower bed or something like that. These are things, man, that are like mini satellites. They still exist here, man. I go by them and people still have them out there. So a VCR, a TV, and what else? And you were a baller in Poland back then.
Color TV. Yeah. And if you really like on the cutting edge, you had a CD player.
Man.
And this was the funny thing, man. Like some other people that he knew smuggled those in, right? So they had CD players in the house. And, like I always tell them, I'll play something, right? And they all played classical music. And I was like, why are you playing this garbage? Like, play something normal, right? But I realized that it was the only type of music they could afford because everything else was like so expensive. So everyone became a snob in classical music because they couldn't afford anything else. But it was like, it was just hilarious.
So the hip hop scene in Poland was not big in the day, huh?
So the hip hop scene was just starting, but hip hop is a very street music, right? For younger people. So I knew a few that were starting to play with it, but it was very, very rough, man. Like you could hear cars going by because they would record on like small tape decks. They had music playing from a different deck, not even connected because no one had that, those tools. Rapping and then like trying to overdub. It was really, really basic, and I mean it was kind of cool because of that. But yeah, it was definitely not anything even close to professional. But the one thing which I remember, which was funny, we didn't have many things at the house. Like we didn't have too many status symbols. We had VCR, and the color TV because from my dad's hustles. But when we got the satellite, the whole neighborhood came out to watch my dad and some people install it. It was such a new thing on the balcony. They were like, it was a show. Like the whole,
It's great, man.
yeah, was out just watching, like, what's happening? Oh yeah, they're getting the signal, like they're passing this on, like it's gonna help them anything, like But it was just a funny thing.
Hey,
I remember
we just changed internet service providers, and so yesterday, as we're recording this, we bought a new router because our service speed just went through the roof. I mean, I feel like a baller now here in West Virginia because I have the internet speed. My neighbors are probably jealous, so I have to go get a new router. And my son's taking online college courses at the university, and I'm working from home, doing podcasts from home, and so we go get a router, and it's defective out of the box. I mean, I'm on the phone for hours with Netgear and resetting it, things like that. So we finally got it hooked up and everything. And as you were talking about that, man, I thought to myself, I'm the baller in my neighborhood because I have the internet speed.
Right?
Yeah, because I have the internet speed now, and it's like, how do we want to set the password so nobody comes? So what we've done, Tom, is at our place we have a whole home generator. We have the blazing internet speed. I'm thinking about putting a moat out in front of my house and just walling off my property so I can protect myself from invasion. Because if the power goes out and the internet goes down, man, I'm still set, and I just don't want invaders rushing the property, man. That's what I was thinking about when you were talking about.
You probably should have a moat. Yeah, you probably should have a moat.
Yeah,
it probably wouldn't work as well in West Virginia because your neighbors are probably not as close. But in the cities, what I've always done in the States when I was younger, and this is starting like 15, 20 years ago, I used to always set up my wireless name as like FBI Van 003.
My son suggested that. He said we should make it like NSA or something like that, Homeland Security. Yeah. So, but what we ended up doing was my son is a huge Office fan. He's a huge fan of the Office. And so he named it Threat Level Midnight after the Michael Scott movie inside of that. But I want to fast forward a little bit. Your mom and dad, you're in Poland, your dad's doing well with the side hustle. What was the impetus, though, for you and your family to emigrate to the United States? What was that breaking point or that tipping point for your mom and dad where they said, hey, we've got to go do something else?
So my dad thought that it's not sustainable, what he was doing. He was really in kind of like a feast and famine, like almost any, business that does things like that. If they catch him, he's going to lose a lot of money, probably can't do it. Like if the car breaks, he maybe can't afford a new one. Like everything was really difficult. And we left right before they started talking about the European Union. Right. So it was that moment my dad just kind of, pulled the trigger on it. We had two ways to go. We could move to Germany because my family's German ancestry-wise. So I had a passport. He had a passport ready. We just had to go pick it up and we could move to Germany. Or my mom's side was in the States. Mm-hmm. And they just made the decision that, we're going to go to the States. Let's see how that works out. But we had those two choices. We were going to move either way. We just didn't know which direction.
Do you wonder how your life would have been different had your parents decided to move to Germany instead of the United States?
I don't. I went back. I have family in Germany, and I think it would have been much, much worse for me.
So you feel like that your mom and dad just saying, okay, we're going to pull the trigger and go to the U.S. was absolutely the right move. And help me with the timeline. This is probably what, early 90s, maybe late 80s, early 90s when you guys moved to the States?
Exactly in 90.
Wow. So 30 years ago, and man, that was, and you talk about Germany then, it was, I think, 88 or 89 when the wall fell. And so, East Germany was now starting to assimilate to some semblance of freedom after decades of being under communist rule. But when you got to the United States, what was the biggest thing that you said, man, I don't think we're anywhere close to where I'm familiar with? What was your first impression? Your first impression rather when you got to the U.S.?
It was really difficult. Like when I said, US was a good choice for me, it was a much better choice for me than my parents. And they thought that they probably made the wrong decision, and they still do in some ways. And they've asked me about just like, has it actually been better for you? And I was like, yeah, you made the best choice for me. There's no country where you can set up a business and run it the way we do in the States. There's no other place where the ease of running a business. Being an employee in America, as my parents have been, is horrible. I've gone through a couple of jobs. I see what that is. It's horrible. If you're going to be an employee, go to Europe. You're going to have a much, much better life. But as a business person, there's no better country in the world. And I think maybe that kind of helps them to sleep well at night. But I think that was the main thing. When we moved to the States, it was hard. They had 3-4 jobs, minimum wage or below. We were with a family member, which was not a good person at all. They had no help, no money, just trying to move onto our own. We were living in like a basement of that person's house. Like it was just a really stressful time for him. I didn't feel it so much because as a kid, you're just kind of like, oh, it's another crappy adventure that they're taking me on, that type of thing. But later on, I noticed just how much it affected them.
So you
were, it was hard. It was
9 or
hard.
10 years old when you moved to the States?
Yeah, I was about 10. Yeah.
So now your formative years are coming up, and you're going to school in the States as opposed to going to school in Poland, things like that. And your parents settled in the Chicago area. Is that where they settled?
Yeah.
So for some perspective, that for those that may not know, there is a neighborhood, and I drove through it once, and it's unbelievable. The ethnicity that Chicago has, that unless you drive through those neighborhoods, you would never know it. There is a fully Polish neighborhood there in Chicago, and you drive down the street and they're Polish. At least this was when I was there 20 years ago and drove through this neighborhood. There were Polish signs, businesses that sold Polish products. You would think it would be easier for them to assimilate, knowing that there was a community there already that spoke Polish and things like that. What do you think was the hardest thing for you to adjust to, though, as you got to be 12, 13, 14 years old, and you're in the United States? You're going, man, I've got to figure this out about living in America.
So here's the problem, right? Like that neighborhood was huge. I think at one point, like 1 out of 8 people in Chicago were Polish. But we were in the way, way out suburbs, about an hour away from it.
Gotcha.
And the experience was completely different than that. Like we had 0 Polish people around us at all. So it was very hard. Everything was far away. We needed a car for everything. We had no one to talk to. We couldn't speak English. We had no help. It was very, very difficult. Very difficult. If we stayed in that neighborhood, just like in New York, when I later moved to New York to Greenpoint, that was a Polish neighborhood. Life would have been so much easier. Like you move in, this is like same thing as Poland, but we were not. Like my formative years, it was just going to school, coming back, not seeing my parents because they're at work, feeding myself, going to sleep, waking up, my parents already gone to work, not seeing them, waiting for the school bus, and it was just pretty much like that for years.
What do you think the biggest thing you learned was? And I didn't mean to jump in there, but what's the biggest thing that you think you learned about business from those years growing up? Because you learned the hustle part from your dad, and man, I admire that, because my dad was real similar in the way he hustled with sales jobs and things like that. So I can totally empathize and relate to what you're saying there. But growing up there, what do you think the biggest thing that you learned that has helped you in business from those years, where it's like man, I see the work that my parents are putting in just to survive, not to eat, grow their business from 5 million to 10 million. It was just to eat every day and have a place to live.
Yeah. So the one thing I learned is that being an employee doesn't work in that country. If you have two people working 4 jobs and you can't afford new shoes, that's not the right path at all. So I quickly found out, like, I'm not going to be an employee, other than maybe to learn something, and then I'm off. This is not for me. And second thing, I became super independent because no one's around. And I remember I had a lot of drive, confidence, independence, and people were asking me about that. And I'm like, well, part of it was because I just had to. But part of it was like, how do you compete with someone like me who's got nothing to lose? Like, I lost everything back then, I thought, the moment I left the country. Like, all my family, friends, belongings, everything was gone. So I'm like, you guys have things to lose. I have nothing to lose. It's going to be hard. It's going to be very hard. And that kind of, it played a big role in my 20s as well.
Man, I love that. I love that,
yeah.
Tom. I love that because I think so many people, and I want to park here just a minute, and then I want to get a little bit more out of your story, because I think so many people today are so afraid. They're holding everything close to the vest in business and sales and whatever it is they're doing, because they're afraid they're going to lose it all. How much more, how aggressive, and I want to talk to the business owner that's sitting there, how, listening to Tom and I talk, how much more aggressive would you be? Would you take that next step if you had nothing to lose? If you said, if it fails, okay, big deal. No, so what? How much more successful would you be if there was nothing to lose? And I love what you said there, man. You were just like, you're going to compete against me. I have nothing to lose, and you have everything to lose, because you have kind of built this house of cards. Not you, but the person you're competing against. When you think about that mentality, how did it push you past what you were comfortable with? How far past your comfort zone did that mentality push you?
Very far. Like, my parents' dream for me was like, just go to college, get a job. I went to 3 colleges. I moved all over the country. I got into the music industry. I started my own businesses. Like, they still can't believe even now that I'm still building things and, like, still pushing. And I'm like, I'm in a different situation now. Like, I put a lot of my stuff in a trust in the States, and so no one can take it from me. I got nothing to lose again.
Yeah.
I'm always going to be okay. Worst case scenario, I'm just going to end up in a comfortable apartment. Like, there's nothing holding me back, but I just made it a little different now than before. Before it was just, nothing at all. But now I feel like, so what? If everything fails, I'm still good. They can't take that away from me, because and that's an American thing, right? Which I love. It's like, it's not really owned by me anymore. I don't own anything. So I used the things that I learned about the richer people in America, and I kind of set it up for my family in a way where even my parents are really comfortable. Everything's in a trust. Everything's, well, one of the biggest fears for the Polish community in America is, like, if you get sick, they're going to take your house away when you're old. One of the biggest fears. And I think for a lot of Americans as well. Well, the way I set things up, I'll like tell my parents, get sick as much as you want. They can't take anything. Everything's owned by the trust. You just control it. You don't own anything. Like, I set things up in a way where the whole family is fine, but I used the knowledge from, seeing business people and richer people use loopholes and other things, and I've always done that. And it's the same thing. Like, I don't ever have a fear of failing, because, like, what's the worst that could happen? Like, 10 years ago, I would have said, like, the worst thing, I'm just going to go get a job, which is what normal people do. Mm-hmm. Save some money and start over again. That's the worst thing that could happen.
Well, it's the power of being nimble, because, and Tom, I've kind of taken that same mindset a little bit too. I look at this, and I'm recording this in a little studio that I've set up. But here's the bottom line. Everything that I'm using to talk with you is portable. I can pack it up, I can take it with me, and I could be in a bunker somewhere doing, as long as I've got an internet connection, and I've got that covered too. You get a hotspot. I love what you said there about portability, because in America, we've always been drilled on security. We've got to be secure. We've got to be safe. We've got to be taken care of. And for me, my mindset's kind of flipped. Like, I would rather be portable than secure, because if I'm always moving and I can continue to do business, or I can continue to live my life in a portable manner where I'm constantly moving, then I'm way ahead of the game. Like I carry this huge backpack with me when I travel. I have this Nike gym bag that's a basketball bag. Thing probably weighs 40 pounds. I have an extra pair of clothes in there. I have my tech gear. Like if the airline loses my luggage, I'm cool. I'm okay. I can still work. I can still function. I can still do everything. And I love what you said there about what you're really talking about is being portable, being nimble, and not relying so much on external forces, but more on internal forces.
Yeah. So I did a podcast this morning, and someone asked me like what success means to me, and I gotta tell you, I was like held back for a bit. I was like, I'm not sure. But what I realized is being able to pick my own battles.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Like no one else gets to pick them for me. No one tells me what to do, where to go, how to do it. That's my freedom. That's my success. Like only I will say, like, we are gonna, choose this battle and go with it. If not, I can always say no and move on. Now the portability, like the way I've done it is kind of extreme. Like I've stress tested my business a lot. This was maybe 5-6 years ago, and I moved around the world with like 2 suitcases, 14, 15 countries, living 3 months each. I was able to go wherever I want to. And as things happened, communities popped up. Like I was really being able to take advantage of either lower cost of living or a better group of people. So the portability definitely did help. And it would be, I think, sad like if I couldn't move because I gotta wait till I can sell a house or something. Like it seems like such a pain.
Well, and it's what I say about portability is, and really, and I didn't mean to take the conversation this way, but I'm glad it's gone this way, is that business owners have to understand and salespeople have to understand you get to control your own destiny. If you're not in control of your own destiny, then you're basically moving, you're waiting on other things to happen instead of making that, which is anti-sales. Salespeople are trained and conditioned to be making things happen, but yet they're going, well, I can't sell because we're in a pandemic. Well, these businesses are closing because they're in a pandemic. Like if you're waiting on this thing to be over so things can go back to normal, man, you're missing it. You've got to create your own normal. And I love the fact that, Tom, that you said, man, I'm going to take control of my business and I'm going to make it to where I can work wherever I want to work. I can do whatever I want to do. And that's freedom. When I got to ask this before I move real quick to a couple other things. When you moved to America, was that something that when you guys landed in the States that you went, oh my God, these people they're free. They go where they want to go. They do what they want to do. Is that where it really ingrained for you to take your business and just make it wherever you wanted to make your business?
You want to know the truth?
Yeah, absolutely.
So 2 thoughts on that. we were told that America is a free country. It's actually one of the most unfree countries in the world. It's such a police state, it's not even funny. Like, I can do things in Poland or Asia, almost any country, so much more freely than I could ever do in America. Almost everything. And but the reason why I wanted to move around is every Polish person had a dream. And my dad had this dream too. And he couldn't do it, but I was able to do it in a much better form. Leave Poland, come back with a lot of money, live like kings. That was everyone's dream, right? Because it didn't take much back then. What I thought is, let me take that a step further. What if I can keep making money in the States in the way I want to and still live in a country like Poland if I wanted to, for example? And that was, and I did, I thought it was okay during the summer. Then the, cold weather came and I was like, oh, this sucks, I'm getting out.
Kind of reminds you of Chicago in the winter time. Chicago and Poland's atmosphere.
Same thing. I run away from Chicago as soon as the winter comes.
Dude, I went to a game in Wrigley Field one time. I went to a game in Wrigley Field in June, and I'm thinking, okay, man, June is hot because we had flown from West Virginia up there for a conference, and so a guy I worked with, we were like, let's go to Wrigley Field. We went to a night game. We froze because in June, man, it was cold. He looked at me, he's like, man, I'm freezing. I'm like, we're in Chicago. In June, it gets chilly. It's just, it's the way Chicago is. And I didn't mean to jump in there, but I love what you said there about, and I want to go here for just a minute, man. Forgive me for stretching this out a little bit, but it's so fascinating what you just said there, because you're 100% right. We are living at the time we're recording this under mandates. You have to wear a mask in public. You have to do this. You have to do that. If you own a restaurant, you can only have 50% occupancy. You have to social distance. You're 100% right. And the regulations that businesses the hurdles that they have to jump through to open a business and run a business is mind-boggling. The tax code. We have, in America, we have over-secured ourselves. We said, well, we can't let you do this. If you do this, you'll do it illegally. And a lot of people just want to run businesses freely. And I love what you said. You're 100% right. We have over-governmentized business. We've over-governmentized everything. And so, man, I appreciate you telling the truth, because you're 100% right. We have done this to ourselves. Yeah.
It's wild. Like, when I think of my parents, they tried to have a small fire in the backyard, really controlled in a little pit, got a ticket.
Nothing wrong with that. Yeah.
No, 1 foot too close to the fence. Okay. My dad was hammering something. The police showed up. Someone messaged that he's fixing the house without a permit. He's like, I'm putting up pictures on the walls, things like that. And I'm like, there's nothing free about that country. Like, for me, like, I'm getting some blood work done, like we do every year, just to test myself, and I like to get different opinions. So I message one of the doctors in America. I want you to do this, blah, blah, blah. First message back I get, oh, if you're in the States, the lab work's going to take 3 months. But if you're out, like, I don't know, we can't send you medicine, blah, blah, blah. I was like, lady, listen here. I'm in a free country right now. Yeah. You tell me what I need. I get it over the counter at any pharmacy I want to. Like, there's none of this nonsense in these other countries. Like, go get it.
Yeah.
You just use your expertise and tell me, right? But it's like, I'm hearing all this pushback over things like, why are you pushing back? It's just medication. If I need something, just tell me. I go to the pharmacy down the street, and I pay 1/10 of what you're paying. So
yeah, we definitely, yeah. You're 100%, because again, as I was talking about a minute ago, my wife and I went to Best Buy, less than 10 minutes away. We walked in, we got a router, we hooked it up. You should be able to go do that. I shouldn't need someone's permission to visit a loved one in the hospital because of a pandemic or something like that. I shouldn't need your permission to go do something. in a free country. I mean, I love what you said there, and people are going, well, you're getting political. Well, you know what? Here's the thing. This guy knows what it's like to live in you know what it's like to grow up in a communist country. You know what that looks like. And what you're saying is, people, that's not cool. You know, you don't want to live there. You think it's bad now. You don't want to live in a true because you know what a police state looks like, Tom. You've
I do.
Yeah.
I do. And that's the thing, man. Like, and my parents, you know, especially, you know, they keep saying, like, we moved out of one police state into a next.
Yeah.
Like, who would have thought? Who would have thought? And like I said, the only good thing out of it is me. Like, I'm taking advantage of the business world. Running a brick and mortar in America is not fun at all. I had it. Always problems with codes, with taxes, with unemployment, like so much nonsense. Running an online business, it's much sweeter. And especially if you're able to go wherever you want to and run it, even better.
Well, exactly. And Tom, again, I want to be respectful of your time, and man, this has been dynamic conversation. I want to ask you about the biggest obstacle, whether personally or in business, that you've overcome, because you were very candid about you and your family moving to the States, and I appreciate you sharing that with us. What's the biggest obstacle that you've overcome and the lesson you learned from it, whether personally or in business?
I think for me, it was overcoming this hustle mentality. You know, like seeing the way my dad was running a business and the way Polish people usually run businesses, everything was a hustle when I was growing up, you know. And, you know, hustles are hustles. They usually, that's what they are. And it took me a long time to figure out how to run a proper business, you know, play long-term games with long-term people. And it was very difficult wrapping my mind around, you know, let's not do this other hustle and make a lot of money. It's going to stop in 4 years. Let's actually build things and do it the proper way. It was actually a very difficult problem for me, and it took me many years to kind of move from this. Oh yeah, but we could still make a killing here, you know, really quick, or there. Yeah, it was a long time, but that was from my roots, you know. Like with my dad, it was always like, "What's the next hustle? What are we gonna do? Going to Sweden, Germany? What are we doing?" You know, it's a lot of the things that we learn when we're kids, we then take a long time to unlearn.
Wow, man, I love what you said there. It's about shifting that mindset. It really is, because you think, okay, it's a learned behavior. We've always done it this way. We can't change it because this is the way we've always done it. I love what you said there about it didn't take us long to unlearn something. Like we decided this was not working anymore. We were going to move it. Man, I love that. Leave the audience, if you will, my last question for you. And again, thank you so much for your time. I've enjoyed our conversation. What's your biggest piece of intentional encouragement for business owner, for somebody out there going, hey, Tom, I want to take that next step, make that next move, or I'm feeling a pinch right now? What's your biggest piece of intentional encouragement for folks?
So the main thing that I can tell you from what I'm seeing that stops a lot of people, stop waiting for someone else's permission.
That is so good. That is so good. Yeah, why would you wait for anybody's permission to do anything?
But it becomes, you know, even in ways that some people don't realize. I want to get on a podcast, so I'm waiting for someone to respond, and I'm not looking for other ones. I'm, you know, trying to get into this position, and let's say do marketing, so I'm waiting for someone to hire me instead of just learning marketing and trying to do it themselves. Like this, you know, shows up in a lot of different ways, but I find a lot of people wait and ask for permission. You know, like in the course space, I'll see people be like, do you think this is a good idea? Why do you need my permission?
Yeah.
Why? Just test it out, validate it, see if it sells. If not, then create something else. But I see that stopping a lot of people. And the pandemic is even, making it worse, because now I'm like, not only am I waiting for permission from someone, I'm also hoping that things become better. Like maybe magically on December 31st, everything bad goes away and next year is going to be amazing. I'll just do it next year. So they're putting it off, and they're also waiting, on the permission. So it's a double whammy. So don't do that.
Man, I love that. What a powerful way to end our conversation. Tom, we could have done 2 hours. Your story is so powerful and it's fascinating. He is also, and I failed to mention this, he's also the host of the Smart Brand Marketing podcast. So check that out. Check out We Market online courses. Where else can people find you, connect with you, get a hold of you, tap into your businesses? The floor is yours, man. Tell people how they can get a hold of you.
You just mentioned it. I'm that's what I'm doing. The course marketing and the Smart Brand Marketing podcast. That's actually the umbrella company. So if you go to smartbrandmarketing.com, you can contact me. There are no walls in between me and people. Like, you just message, I'll get it. Very, very easy to find. But yeah, like, look, I know, things are hard, but things are always hard. Like, if you want to, get started on something, if you want to learn something, just get started on it. Like, there's a book by Stephen King on writing, right? And it's a pretty long book, and there's a lot of good info in there. But he says, if you want to become a writer, just write. That's it. So he sums it up in a sentence in the beginning, and then once you once you get going at something, you're going to find a lot of nuance, and you're going to learn different tactics, strategies, blah blah blah. But initially, you just got to get going at it. That's really it. That's the advice I can give.
I'm glad you said that, and I'll finish with this, is that I say to myself, man, I wish I had done XYZ when I started podcasting. I didn't know what I didn't know. So now I'm so much further down the road. I know that if I had to halt this and then start from scratch, I know exactly what I would do. And I can help other people do that same thing. Man, Tom, this is so good, man. Thank you for joining me today on the Intentional Encourager podcast. Go find this guy and connect with him. Tom Libelt, Libelt. Find him on LinkedIn, find him on other platforms. Man, thank you so much. What a powerful conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was good. It was good.
My thanks, as always, to producer Bryce Sexton and technical advisor Matt Means. And the ultimate thanks goes to the Lord Jesus Christ, who provides intentional encouragement every day through His Word. And until next time, remember, everyone, everywhere, at any time, and any place, can be an intentional